All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. I'm gonna give people 1 more minute to log in, and then we can get started. Would I ask you to say in the chat hello and where you're from, just so we can warm up a bit? And also just give me some feedback about the sound. Let me know that you can hear me okay. Always nice to double check before we get started. Sound is great. Okay, good. Thank you. Hello from London. More of London. All right. I love someone had their AI meeting notes on. I apologize in advance if the AI cannot keep up with my wonderful British accent, Bear with me, I'm really sorry. Oh dear. Hello from Coventry. Hello. Hello from Stroud, Kent. Hello, Southampton. All right, with Northumberland. Oh my God, it's cold up. Oh dear, you must be cold. You must be cold. Okay. Guys, before we get started, a quick note from me. Make sure you keep your eyes in the chat. Sometimes, depending on the device you log in, you might not be able to access the chat. I know sometimes people have struggled with that. So I'm putting a link now. Let it sit in your browser. This is for the keywords for the CEU, okay? So just click on it now and let it sit in your browser so we know it's good to go. And keep an eye out. I will also post some additional links as we go forward. So hello to all of you. Hello to Cardiff. Hello to Gloucester. Hello to everybody. I'm Thanos Bostanis. I am a lecturer at the Tizard Center, and I'm the program director of the MSc in Applied Behavior Analysis and Positive Behavior Support. For those of you that do not know about the Tizard Center, we specialize in intellectual and developmental disabilities. And as part of our courses, we offer training in applied behavior analysis and PBS that is accredited both by the UK Society for Behavior Analysis and also meets the criteria for the BACB pathway 2. So if you do our courses, you can become either a board certified behavior analyst or a UK BA cert, which is the equivalent, subject, of course, to meeting all the additional field work criteria, exams, etc., etc. Our courses are both full-time and part-time, 1 year or 2 years, and we have campus-based and distance learning options if you want a bit more flexibility. We also have PhD opportunities, and we do supervise many PhD students who do behavior analytic work here in the UK. And we also have a peer-reviewed journal. It is called the Tizard Learning Disability Review, a journal that has a small impact factor, and it's indexed in all the major databases. And we're very keen to always promote good practice in the field of intellectual and developmental disabilities. So please do consider submitting to TLDR. I will be putting all these links and information in the chat as we go forward. So today, for our monthly behavioral talk, we have Dr. Kim, who is going to be presenting for us for the next hour. I will only interrupt G at 3 points to deliver the keywords. So keep an eye out for that. And G, thank you very much for joining us. Can I ask you to share with us something that you're currently working on that you're excited about, and then please take it away. And I will be here in the background to support. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Thanos, and hi everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you, and it's an honor being here. And I hope you enjoy my presentation today. So my name is Jiyoung Kim, and I'm currently an assistant professor of psychology at Penn State Harrisburg. I guess a fun project that I'm working on right now, which is slightly different from what I've been doing, is looking at social media use from like a behavioral economics lens. So trying to, look at different socially significant behavior, and social media use came to light, and my lab, so my students and I are trying to look at it more from a behavior economics lens to see how people make decisions related to it. So I guess that's one fun project that's going on right now that I wanted to share. All right, so I can take
That's
away.
actually super exciting, G, and it's a
Thank you.
nicely growing area. So we would love to host you again in the future to learn more about that line of work. So
I
what
would
are you
love
talking to
to.
us about today?
Sounds great. Well, thank you. I would love to be invited again. So today I'll be presenting on this topic, increasing choices, practical considerations for behavior analysts. And I hope you enjoy. All right, so let me start with this question. What does choice mean?
Just to
Everyone
say, we're
engaged.
not doing screen sharing, G. If you want to share
Oh,
your PowerPoint,
oh, that was my bad. I
that's all
apologize.
right. We know
Let me go.
it works, so we're good.
Let
Just-
me do this. Ah, all right. There it is. Did that work, Thanos?
Yes, we're good to go. Thank you.
Perfectly. All right, perfect. So I'll go ahead and start that again. Thank you. So today I'll be talking about increasing choices, practical considerations for behavior analysts. So I'm going to start with this question. Now, what does choice really mean? If you really think about it, everyone engages in choice every day, probably every minute or every second, deciding what you have for breakfast, what you wear, where to work or school, how you'll get to work or school, to list the very least, honestly. These all involve choice. And you may also have to make decisions that have significant long-term consequences, such as what you'll major in undergrad or graduate school, where you will live, who you want to live with, and much more. So, using its technical definition, choice is often conceptualized as the allocation of behavior among activities, and you can see that on the screen as well. Put more simply, choice is engaging in a selection response when multiple options are concurrently available. Now, let's put this in a clinical context. In other words, what does choice look like for the clients we typically work with? For individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, opportunities to make choices for oneself are often much more limited. Individuals without disabilities generally have the freedom to make choices that can either benefit or sometimes harm their health or personal safety. However, individuals with disabilities are often at a higher risk of having these liberties taken away because we have this assumption that they might lack the ability to make informed decisions. Well, here's another question. Why should we care about choice? Now, first off, acknowledging and supporting client choice is explicitly listed as a critical component of treating clients with compassion, dignity, and respect within the ethics code for behavior analysts. Now, if we look at the last clause here, it says acknowledging that personal choice in service delivery is important by providing clients and stakeholders with needed information to make informed choices about services. Choice is important from a compassion, dignity, and respect standpoint because it's central to involving clients in therapeutic decisions and helping them gain as much independence and autonomy as possible. Essential clinical and research practices, such as obtaining assent or consent, really rely on the client possessing the necessary skills, opportunities, and support to actively participate in choice regarding their own treatment. Such notion of the importance of choice or advocating for embedding choice into support planning has been supported by not only behavior analysis, but even outside of behavior analysis and many other organizations that support people with disabilities. For example, the ARC points out that, quote, they actually say that there are many ways people with IDD, developmental disabilities, make decisions, both on their own and with support, but a person's ability to make decisions can change throughout their lifetime. They strongly advocate for what's called supported decision making, which basically means that people with IDD should have the ability to make their own choices with assistance and support when needed, rather than having decisions made for them by another person. Another interesting fact is that research actually supports embedding choice into practice. Several research findings so far have suggested that humans prefer choice opportunities over no choice opportunities, and that when choice opportunities are integrated into treatment, client outcomes improve. For example, increasing choice opportunities has been shown to increase functional skills such as on task behavior, assignment completion, and many more. And it also helps decrease challenging behavior. Now, choice is frequently embedded in the practice of applied behavior analysis by arranging opportunities for clients to select the activities and stimuli to which they'll be exposed and with which they'll engage. Sometimes choice in clinical context or clinical practice takes the form of an antecedent, and we might call that a proactive event. For example, you might allow the client to choose which work task they want to engage in first before they engage in the target behavior. At other times, choice in clinical practice may take the form of a consequence, in other words, a reactive event. So for example, you might arrange for a client to earn access to choosing which activities they will engage in during their break after completing their work. But here's the question again, how much do we actually know about choice and how to arrange choice? We talked about the importance of choice, and I think a lot of it, we also know the importance of choice, and the importance cannot be overstated. And even so, it wasn't entirely clear as to what we know about choice so far and how we can apply the findings to better our practice. We hear often to increase choices, to increase responding and or ensure respect and dignity of the client. But when we're actually trying to do that, it may be not so clear as to how we approach this. For example, how many options should there be in an array of choices? When should the choice opportunity be presented? How often should we be presenting choice opportunities? There were so many unanswered questions, and thus we hoped a literature review would help answer two large questions related to this. So one was, what are the experimental arrangement for choice and no choice? And the second question was, what factors influence the preference for choice or no choice? While it was important for us to look at the experimental arrangements of choice, it was equally important to see what affects preference for choice. Once we identify the contingencies affecting one's choice preference, we can more effectively tailor the choice condition so that individuals, so we can promote client involvement and treatment effectiveness. And we know that choice is critical to developing an effective behavior support plan and a meaningful way for a client to be involved in their own treatment decision-making process. If we can set up the contingencies to promote choice and preference for choice of the client, in turn, we would be promoting client involvement and treatment effectiveness. And that's why we added that second question. So I'll just go over the review the method very briefly. What we did was, to that end, we reviewed behavior analytic literature to identify articles that compared choice and no choice conditions. So we hand searched each journal listed on the Association for Behavior Analysis International and Behavior Analyst Certification Board websites using the terms choice and no choice. Choice is such a widely studied topic, not only in behavior analysis, but if you think about it, psychology, economics, political science, just to name a few. We specifically searched behavior analytic journals because we were interested in looking at how we have been doing it as a field, embedding choice into practice. So through our search, all the search processes, we ended up with 38 articles with 41 experiments published between the years of 2000 and 2022. So we have information about the most updated practice. So let me talk about some of the findings, which I think I'm hoping that it's more of the interesting part of the talk today too. Some of the findings related to the first question: what are the experimental arrangement for choice and no choice? The first thing we noticed were three distinct categories of choice options that may influence how we arrange choice. So first, what we found was putative reinforcers as choice options. Basically, this refers to when the choice condition involved a preference assessment or functional analysis to determine a potential reinforcer used as a choice option. And these might include edibles, tangibles, activities, usually preferred options. The second was instructional choice option, which referred to when the choice condition involved following an instruction or completing a task. So selecting a worksheet that someone wants to work on. And the last category was pretty much everything else, the other category. If the choice condition of an experiment didn't meet the first two criteria, the criteria for the first two categories, the experiment was put into this category. So let's look at some of the findings for each of these categories because we categorize based on them. All right, so let's look at putative reinforcers as choice options first. There were 24 experiments out of the 41 experiments that we found that used putative reinforcers as choice options. The most widely used choice option type was edible or preferred food. The array size of the choice options ranged from 2 to all the way to 21, with 5 being the modal array size of choice options. In other words, the most widely used array size was 5. When we look at the timing of the choice opportunity, or when the choice opportunity was delivered, 15 experiments provided the choice opportunity before the participant engaged in the target behavior, whereas about 10 experiments provided the choice opportunity after the participant engaged in the target behavior. So it was about half and half. Now, the last thing that we looked at was the delivery of the chosen option, or when the chosen option was delivered to the client. 14 experiments delivered the chosen option immediately, whereas 11 experiments delivered the chosen option after a delay. So about half and half again. So taking everything together, when a putative reinforcer was used as a choice option, edibles were most widely used in an array size of 5, and about half of experiments reported that the choice opportunity was provided before the participant engaged in the target behavior, with the immediate delivery of the chosen option. When we look at instructional choice options, which there were 14 experiments out of the 41 experiments, the most widely used choice option type was academic materials, or in other words, preferred type of instructional material. So such as selecting a preferred worksheet out of an array of X number of worksheets. The array size ranged from 2 to 6, with 2 being the modal array size. The most widely used array size is 2. All 14 experiments provided the choice opportunity before the participant engaged in the target behavior and delivered the chosen option immediately. And if we actually think about this, it makes sense, because it makes sense that the chosen option is delivered immediately, since a person actually can't begin the task until they have the task. So that's probably the reason why here. Overall, when instructional choice options were evaluated, academic materials were most widely used in an array size of 2, and all experiments reported that the choice opportunity was provided before the participant engaged in the target behavior, with immediate delivery of the choice option. Now, the other choice option category was slightly different, qualitatively different from the other two categories, because the experiments in this category were all basic human operant studies, whereas the other experiments were more applied. Nonetheless, we did find 4 experiments using other choice options, and these are the basic results we found. The most widely used option type was numbers on screen. Like I said, it was a basic operant. Most of them were basic operant studies. Array size of 2 to 8 with the mode of 8. Timing of the choice opportunity being delivered before the target behavior, and the chosen option being delivered immediately after someone engages in choice. Here's the thing though, the information on the other category is preliminary and should be taken with caution, given the wide range of choice options and the small number of experiments that we've just discussed here. Now, looking at the second question, the second research question we had was, what factors influence the preference for choice or no choice? Once we got a sense of the arrangement, we also looked at the factors affecting preference for choice and no choice. Out of the 41 experiments, 22 experiments evaluated preference for choice versus no choice. So we analyzed the preference for choice at an individual participant level. We counted the number of participants who preferred choice, preferred no choice, or showed no preference. So across the 20...
Before you crack on to go over this, let me deliver the first keyword. Folks, the first keyword is basic. The first keyword is basic. Thank you, G.
Thank you, Thanos. So out of the 22 experiments that evaluated preference for choice versus no choice, we had 131 participants in total. Now, out of 131 participants, 103 participants preferred choice. That's about 79% of the participants. 8 participants preferred no choice. That's about 6%. And 20 participants showed no preference. That's about 15% of the participants. So This finding is in line with previous literature indicating that humans actually prefer choice opportunities over no choice opportunities. And a collection of studies evaluating choice showed similar results here. What we also looked at was out of the 22 experiments that evaluated preference for choice versus no choice, 18 experiments evaluated maintenance of preference across time. Now, out of the 18 experiments, 14, that's about 78%, reported that the preference was not maintained across time, and which means that there was a shift in preference at some point in time. If someone preferred choice, at some point they shifted to no choice or no preference, or vice versa. Only 4 experiments showed that preference was maintained across time. What we found was there were 2 large reasons that explain the change in preference. First was the shift in preference was demonstrated when differential reinforcement history successfully switched an individual's preference. And the second was the shift in preference occurring as a result of increased response effort associated to contacting the reinforcer. So I'm going to be talking more about these in the later slides, but I kind of wanted to give you a run through of what we found in terms of the literature review here. So I guess the interesting part is we have the data. We were able to find these, but the next question is, what do our findings actually mean? So I wanted to kind of explain this more so in terms of future practice and research. And there were 2 large themes that emerged as a result of our findings. Now, the first theme was that there were wide differences in choice arrangements. Now, the main purpose of our study was to review and summarize the arrangements of choice within experimental evaluations of choice and no choice. Although choice is ubiquitous in many ways, our analyses actually showed that the variables that affect choice vary in many ways as well, particularly in aspects such as array size, the timing of choice opportunities, or when the choice opportunity was provided, or the delivery of the chosen option, when the chosen option was given to the participant or the client. Now, the first notable difference, like I said, was the array size. When putative reinforcers were used, the array size ranged from 2 to 21, with 5 being the most used. When instructional choice options were used, the array size ranged from 2 to 6, with 2 being the modal array size of choice options. Now, previous findings have shown that array size may affect the value of reinforcers. For example, larger array size, like on the left side here with 9 items versus on the right side, there's only 1 teddy bear, have been shown to, having larger array size like on the left, have been shown to diminish the reinforcing value of each reinforcer for neurotypical preschoolers, and also diminish the reinforcing value for choice for adults. However, these findings should be interpreted cautiously when working with individuals with developmental disabilities, as studies involving individuals with autism spectrum disorder showed a greater preference for a larger array size, like on the left. So we need more research in this area, but that's what we found. That's what we have preliminary in the literature. Now, another interesting variation was when the choice opportunity was provided. Studies evaluating choice as a component of instruction uniformly presented the choice opportunity before the participant engaged in a target behavior. For example, providing 2 or more variations of a task, such as worksheets with numbers versus a worksheet with shapes, prior to the beginning of the session. And as stated before, the chosen option is expected to be delivered immediately, since a person can't begin the task until they have the task. This was not the case when choice was evaluated as a putative reinforcer, since about half of the experiments delivered the chosen option immediately, and other half delivered it with a delay. So this is an area that needs definitely more research to understand the effect of the timing of the choice opportunity and its effect on terms of how clients or participants respond and how their preference change as a result of that. Now, similarly, the timing of the delivery of the chosen option varied. All experiments evaluating choice as a component of instruction involved immediate delivery of the chosen option. However, when evaluating choice as a putative reinforcer, this was not the case. When provided with a choice of two concurrent options, meaning I'm presenting you two options at the same time. For example, like on the screen here, would you like to play outside, like on the left, or would you like to read a book on the right side here? Those are two options that you can choose from, and they're presented together. Those are concurrent options. When concurrent options are presented like this, people tend to select the more preferred stimulus. Think of using a preference assessment when we try to identify what an individual prefers the most. What's interesting is studies have also shown that when choice is part of a sequence of outcomes. Now, if I change the question to ask about the sequence, such as, which would you like to do first, play outside or read a book? Do you see how I changed that a little bit? Instead of presenting them at the same time and saying choose one, I'm asking you which one you want to engage in first. Those types of questions, people prefer an improving series of consequences, which is a phenomenon known as negative time preference. And you might be able to relate to that if you go to like a large buffet and let's say you're saving the best bite for last. Now, other studies have also shown that individuals tend to devalue delayed reinforcers, or in other words, prefer the immediate reinforcers when choice involves the two concurrent options. And individuals also prefer to accumulate reinforcers, or in other words, produce larger continuous access to reinforcers delivered later, like on the right side here with a bag of M&Ms instead of one M&M today. Now, taken together, the timing of the delivery of the chosen option may affect an individual's preference for choice. So we should be looking into how we're going to find the optimal timing, because optimal timing may be crucial to increasing the preference for and effectiveness of choice, and there should be further research in this area. Now, you might wonder as I'm talking about this, all right, so there are a lot of mixed findings. What should we do? And you might wonder, why are there so many differences? So we thought of some potential reasons for the variations. There were three that we came up with mainly. First, behavior analysis as a field focuses on tailoring assessment and treatment to individual needs, which means that choice arrangements in behavior analytic articles may be individualized for every participant to increase treatment efficacy. And that might be why we're seeing some variations. The second reason might be that the variations in the choice arrangements might be that some of the studies may have been exploratory or preliminary. These experiments may have used some arbitrarily selected numbers or arrangements to assess the feasibility of an assessment procedure, or trying to implement a novel intervention. So it was exploratory or preliminary in nature. And some of the studies explicitly stated that their study were exploratory or preliminary in nature, and that's how we got this idea of it as well. The last reason for the variations in choice arrangements may be, simply the lack of guidance on how to arrange choice best tailored for an individual. It's important that us behavior analysts integrate the best available empirical data with the clinical expertise and client values and context. Unfortunately, variations without empirical support could compromise the efficacy of the choice arrangements in treatment and make replications across studies difficult. So it may be worth for behavior analysts to develop systematic guidelines for arranging choice conditions. So let me dive into preference for choice this time. I guess the implication of our finding related to preference. Now, the evaluation of preference for choice provided insight into the variables affecting whether people prefer having choice, prefer having no choice, or having no particular preference. And this was very interesting because, well, the first thing we found was, yes, an overwhelming majority of participants showed a preference for choice, 103 participants out of 131. So it was good that it was aligned with what research has shown, and it aligns with our ethical code as well. An interesting finding was that there was still a small number of participants who preferred no choice, 8 out of 131 participants, or who showed no particular preference across the different choice conditions, about 20 out of 131 participants. And furthermore, a majority of the studies showed that there was a lack of maintenance in the participants' preference for choice. Now, our findings suggest that there may be two large variables affecting preference for choice. One is on the left side, individual learning history, and on the right side, response effort. First, individual differences, like I've said, may stem from different learning history and may explain the differential preferences for choice. So there were the small number of individuals who preferred no choice, or the majority of individuals who preferred choice. It may be a result of an individual's learning history. For example, several studies in our review demonstrated that differential reinforcement history successfully switched an individual's preference. These studies evaluated differential reinforcement through multiple parameters of reinforcement, including preference for reinforcement, such as high versus low preference items, reinforcer magnitude, immediacy of reinforcer delivery, and odds of winning a game, how likely someone is going to win a game. Now, the successful shift in preference highlights how malleable preference for choice and no choice can be, and that the arrangement of the environment along with one's reinforcement history of choice is critical in explaining one's preference. So we should be looking into individuals' learning history as it affects preference for choice. Secondly, what we found was the response effort required to contact a reinforcer may explain the inconsistent preference for choice. Now, one experiment, Tiger et al. 2006, actually showed that all three participants in that experiment shifted their preference from choice to no choice when the work requirement in the terminal link of the choice condition increased. And what's interesting is that this is actually consistent with findings, not just with choice, but other evaluations or other interventions. Several other studies evaluated children's preference for contingent reinforcement and non-contingent reinforcement. Children generally prefer contingent reinforcement over non-contingent reinforcement under a continuous schedule of reinforcement. But these studies, multiple studies, were able to show a shift in preference when the schedule of reinforcement was progressively thinned. Or in other words, when the response effort increased, the preference switched. All right, so we've been talking about the literature the literature relating, behavior analytic literature relating to choice and no choice, looking at the trend, the data, but also looking at, what the themes were. And we were able to find that, all right, there's a wide variety of choice arrangements. We may need some systematic guidelines to inform best choice arrangement. And also we are able to identify some variables affecting preference, such as learning history and also response effort associated with a choice or no choice condition. Now, based on the findings, we developed a set of some recommendations for practice who wish to incorporate choice into practice or try to enhance it further. What we noticed was that there were three distinct types of choice options. So the first recommendation that we give is consider the option type that you're using in your choice arrangement. We encourage practitioners to first determine the option type. Now, we suggest this first because we found different arrangements of choice based on the option type. For example, we talked about how array sizes of choice varied more when choice was evaluated as a putative reinforcer than when choice was evaluated as a component and instruction. This means that practitioners should first determine the option type they'll use in the choice arrangement before arranging the other variables. Second, we said we thought that it's important to consider the choice arrangement, including array size, timing of choice opportunity, and delivery of the chosen option. Of course, these are not the only things that entail choice. There are many other variables or aspects or components of choice that needs further evaluation, but these have been explicitly explored previously, and we were able to develop some recommendations revolving around these. So the first was relating to the array size. When considering the array size, we encourage practitioners to begin with a smaller array size and increase it as needed. Now, as mentioned, a larger array size could potentially diminish the reinforcing value of each option. So it may be beneficial to begin with a smaller array size. Now, our review showed that the modal array size was 5 when choice was evaluated as putative reinforcer, and 2 when choice was evaluated as a component instruction. In other words, 5 was most widely used when putative reinforcers were used as choice options, and 2 was most widely used when instructional choice options were used. Now, unfortunately, as far as we know, there are no guidelines on the recommended array size for setting up the choice and condition initially. So what we've initially developed was to give a preliminary suggestion that practitioners start with an array size of 5 or smaller for putative reinforcers and 2 for instructional choice option. And I said 2 because we can't really go below 2. Here, there are also studies that have shown that a larger array size increases the value of choice to a greater degree than a smaller array size. And that is that individuals preferred having more options to choose from rather than fewer. So we kind of had two different flavors of array size or how we should interpret it. We said, yes, it might be best to start with a smaller array size, but given the finding that some individuals also prefer having more options to choose from rather than fewer, what we said was it might be good to incrementally increase the array size depending on client responding. So if there's limited client responding when provided with a smaller array size, a practitioner should or could incrementally increase the array size to promote choice. Now, I want to reiterate that this is a general suggestion based on an aggregate result we got through our review. We strongly recommend that practitioners consider the client's individual characteristics and responding when deciding and adjusting the array size. Now, when considering the second part of this is the timing of the choice opportunity. When considering the timing of choice opportunity, our findings suggest that there's a potential advantage to providing putative reinforcers as choice options before the client engages in the target behavior. One study in our review, Peterson et al., 2016, showed that 3 out of 4 participants preferred choice opportunities provided before engaging in the target behavior. And 2 out of 4 participants performed at a higher rate when choice opportunities were provided before engaging in the target behavior. So it wasn't just about preference, but it was also client responding that increase when choice opportunity was provided before someone engaged in a target behavior. Now, despite the potential advantage, looking at advantage of providing the choice opportunity before the target behavior, we do suggest that a practitioner, we understand that a practitioner may want to provide the choice opportunity after target response sometimes. For example, you might wait for a client to or a learner to complete their task. If they wish to do so, or if they wish to do that, it might be we encourage the practitioners to do so because this might be helpful in identifying the most highly preferred reinforcer at the time of selection. So depending on the purpose, depending on the need, you could definitely tailor it. Our suggestions were based on the behavior analytic literature we found so far. Now, the last thing that we said to consider, yes.
Before you talk about the last suggestion, let me deliver the second keyword. So the second keyword is before. The second keyword is before. Okay, guys, make a note of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Thanos. All right, so the last part of this was the delivery of the chosen option. Now, when considering the timing of the delivery of the chosen option, we suggest that the delay should be minimal or immediate delivery may be best. Studies have shown that increases in delay of reinforcer delivery can lead to decreased reinforcer consumption, or in other words, fewer reinforcers are obtained. And as the delay increases, the reinforcer value also decreases. And it's similar to when work requirement is increased. Therefore, if a practitioner wants to promote responding, we recommend that practitioners deliver the chosen option immediately following a selection response. And of course, again, there may be cases where practitioners provide the choice opportunity prior to the target response and deliver the choice after an individual emits the target response. Now, in these cases, some delay is acceptable, and the literature actually supports that. There are a couple of studies. One, Leon et al., 2016, actually showed that delayed food delivery up to 60 seconds produced responding that was similar to that with immediate food reinforcement, which is pretty cool. And similarly, Cyan Vollmer 2012 showed that delays up to 40 seconds produced an acquisition rate similar to that when food and toys were delivered immediately. So this is to say that yes, the preliminary our suggestion is immediate delivery of the chosen option would be best, but if there are cases where delay is inevitable or delay is preferred, and in those cases, some delays are okay. Now, another set of recommendations refer to preference. Now, ongoingly, we encourage practitioners to evaluate the individual learning history of the clients and response effort associated with choice to promote preference. I know I've been talking about this in the previous slides, but by evaluating these variables, as mentioned earlier, we can set up the contingencies to promote choice and preference for choice, which would be in turn promoting client involvement and treatment effectiveness. So it's not this one-time thing, but as you're going, you're also building instructional history as you're working with the client. So just make sure to, as we work with the client, we continuously evaluate the response effort associated with contacting the reinforcer, and also evaluating the individual client's learning history. And before considering the preference for choice, actually, one big thing that we should consider, practitioners should be evaluating, is whether a client has the prerequisite skills to engage in choice. Now, our review actually identified, I haven't presented this in the data part, but what we actually found was that only a handful of studies reporting prerequisite skills, handful of studies reported prerequisite skills instruction prior to allowing a participant to engage in choice opportunities. If we don't ensure that a client has clear understanding of the contingencies, some clients unfortunately may struggle to make selections or select an option that may not actually reflect their preferences. So it may be necessary for a practitioner to ensure that a client can, first of all, differentiate the different conditions that are being presented, whether a client can engage in a selection response, and whether a client can understand the consequences associated with the different conditions. Now, if a prerequisite skill for choice is absent, and this is not an exhaustive list of the prerequisite skills. I'm sure depending on the arrangement, the setting, there are going to be more prerequisite skills that may be needed or need to be evaluated for the client to engage in choice meaningfully. If a prerequisite skill for choice is absent, we encourage a practitioner not only to expose the client to the conditions, which we've seen a lot in the literature, exposing to the different conditions, but it may be necessary to directly teach the skills prior to arranging a choice condition. And that way, we're ensuring that clients are making selections that truly reflect their preferences. So all in all, trying to sum up everything that we've been talking about, I feel like it's a big topic and there's a lot of results and analysis that I've presented here. I think trying to putting everything together here is asking this question: so should we increase choice? And the answer is yes. The importance cannot be understated, honestly. Some of the takeaway points I would say is that we should consider several factors to promote choice. Yes, we will increase choice, but we should be doing it mindfully by considering several factors. And those include the various arrangements, There are a lot of literature showing that different arrangements can lead to different outcomes and potentially an efficacy of treatment. So being mindful of the arrangements in advance to arranging a choice condition may be essential. Individuals' learning history and response effort was something that we looked at because those are two big variables that affect preference for choice. And again, preference is something we want to look for because it leads to client involvement or meaningful client involvement in decision making of their own support planning. Oh, response effort, there it is. So again, trying to wrap it up here, choice is critical to developing an effective behavior support plan and a meaningful way for clients to be involved in their own treatment decision-making process. Now, to that end, we as behavior analysts should continuously involve choice in our practice and set up the contingencies in a way that promotes choice and preference for choice. So ultimately, we are promoting client involvement and ensuring treatment effectiveness. I also would like to make a point that our study, our review was possible because of our field's effort or continuous effort at trying to understand the impact of choice and preference for choice. Because if you really think about it, behavior is all about making choices. This study that we did was more of a collective analysis of existing studies. So I would like to take the time to thank the authors of the papers included in our review who have been advancing our understanding of choice. And thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions or if you would like to connect, please feel free to email me, and that QR code directly leads to the email as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, G. One question from me quickly. You might have said this and maybe I missed it, but has this been published? Can people read the paper? Where can we find the paper?
Oh, thank you for that question. I haven't mentioned it, so thank you for asking that. Yeah, so this actually has been published recently in JABA. So if you go in Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis, it's under a discussion section where it was published online in November. So everyone should be, it's open access, so everyone should be able to have access to the article.
That is great. Folks, have you got any questions? If you do, please, you know the drill. Those of you that have done this before, you can type your questions in the chat and I can read them out for you. And G has access to the chat anyway, but I usually read them out so that the people who will watch the recording are aware of what was discussed, only because they won't have access to the chat. And on that note, if you guys want to go back to this and if you want to revisit it, keep in mind that we upload our sessions to our YouTube channel. You can go to YouTube, and if you type Tizard Center, our channel should come up, and in our channel there is a dedicated playlist that's it's called Behavioral Talks and Behavioral Journal Club. So in there you will find many talks like this from knowledgeable colleagues who have honored us with their presence and have taken time to present on their work and research. It's really exciting, Jay, and I wanted to also ask you, by the way, did you see any? I was expecting to hear a bit more about delay discounting in this, and in a way you did kind of touch upon it, but you didn't go into greater detail. Is there any chance you could talk to us a bit about that? Was there any elements in those papers focusing a bit more on delay discounting and how it affects choice?
That's a great question, and that's something that I initially got interested in the topic of choice as well. Delay discounting is a fascinating topic. So for folks who may not be aware or it's the first time hearing about delay discounting, first of all, it's a very exciting topic. It's basically looking at how individuals make choices when concurrent options are available. And I kind of talked about concurrent options when two choices or maybe more are available at the same time. Basically, it's a way it's a way to capture or quantify how someone devalues a reinforcer as the time increases. So in other words, if I say, do you want $1 right now or $10 tomorrow? I'm asking you to select from a concurrent options of something that's available immediately but smaller, $1 today, or larger and later, which is did I say $10 tomorrow? which is the larger later option. So a series of questions like that are asked to see how someone responds to the different delays and different size of the reinforcer, and see when someone decides to switch to the smaller reinforcer, basically. I have to say though, I think given the journals that we've looked at, and I think it might have been the keywords when we looked up choice and no choice together, we actually did not encounter any delay discounting studies that were identified, which
Oh,
was
that's
very
interesting.
interesting. Yeah, so
Yeah,
I'm
indeed.
assuming that delay discounting choice, I feel like, is a word that may be involved. But I think the keyword no choice may have limited the search, and there were no delay discounting studies that were identified as a result of that. But I
Okay.
do see how it can be. I definitely, especially with the timing of the delivery of the chosen option, or when the opportunity is provided, those can all be evaluated through a delay discounting framework, because you can use hypothetical questions to assess how someone responds to these varying degrees of length, reinforcer size or value. And I feel like the area for research is endless, honestly.
Indeed. We have a question. Uh, Someone says, I work with learning disabilities and autistic folks, and you mentioned that having more choices can cause the person to undervalue them. In terms of giving choices to daily activities to someone, what would be a good array of choice?
Oh, great question. Thank you for that question. I think so. There was a array of well, depending on the choice option, I guess. For putative reinforcers, it was anywhere from 2 to 21. If you're using instructional options such as worksheets, or sometimes there were actually studies asking participants to select a marker that they want to use with, like a marker that has Star Wars on it versus a marker that doesn't have anything on it. So those all went into instructional materials. The instructional options range from 2 to 6, with the mode being 2. So I guess depending on the choice option, it may be slightly different. Because there's no official guideline in terms of what might be a good array size to start with, what we're also suggesting is a bit preliminary. But based on what we found, what we're saying, what we have been recommending is that if you're using putative reinforcers like edibles, activities, tangibles, it may be nice to start with an array size of 5. That was the most widely used array size, or smaller than that. And then you can slowly increase it depending on client responding. If you're using instructional choice option, maybe you can start with 2, which was the most widely used array size, and then increase it incrementally depending on clients responding. I hope that answers the question.
Another question says, for autistic children that have emerging comprehension, should we offer choice before or after gathering all their tokens? As in a way, having to choose before and then waiting to get all the tokens might lead to the putative reinforcer losing its, in a way, efficacy and value. Any
That's
thoughts?
such a Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's where literature and practice kind of have to, dance together to find what works best, honestly. Literature has said that and I'm sure if if you've read the Cooper book, you probably are aware of this. Delay to reinforcers decreases the value of that reinforcer. In other words, immediate delivery of the reinforcer is most effective. So based on that concept, we're suggesting that to really take advantage of the strength of the reinforcer, delivering it immediately might be best. But practically speaking, there are cases where their delay is inevitable, or sometimes you're in a setting where delay is the only option that's there. So in those cases, some delays are okay. But I think it's interesting that you're referring to token economy too, because there needs to be more studies actually related to token economy. Token economy is like another place that another topic that I'm super interested in. But because it has 3 reinforcement schedules embedded in it, it has the token production, exchange production, and then the last one. when you exchange the backup reinforcers or the cost of the backup reinforcer, the three schedules kind of commingle together. It creates a more interesting dynamic, I would say. So I think a straight answer might be slightly tricky, but I think if we definitely need more literature looking at, first of all, the timing of the delivery of the chosen option, and secondly, within the context of token economy, because surprisingly, token economy is such a widely used practice, but there is actually not a lot of good literature out there looking at token economy experimentally. So that was actually something that I've looked into before, and I'm hoping to continue to do, looking into token economy variations as well.
Very good points. Another question says, did the research you reviewed also look at how we teach and shape choice making? Because in a way our work can have a big impact on influencing people's choice. So we need to kind of be mindful of that. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, that's a great question. Absolutely. So I'm trying to think if there were, I guess we gave some recommendations in terms of how to arrange choices, but how to teach and shape choice making, maybe something that I think needs a little bit more research on, honestly. There is one study that was published by Dr. Rajaram that gives practical guidelines as well in terms of embedding choices or increasing choices into practice. And I can also forward that so that it's available to the listeners here. But that might be one reference to look into. But otherwise, I'm not really aware of, I guess, specifically teaching or shaping choice making skills, like the prerequisite skills included within it too. So still a lot of areas to explore. So maybe that's a good dissertation topic. Who knows?
Indeed. We have one last question that says, would the choice be selected using a preference assessment? So when you kind of like offer all the different choices?
Sorry, I'm just reading the question again.
That's fine. I try to summarize them, so I don't in a way
No
hammer
worries.
you with a lot of information. I try to keep it as short as I can.
No worries at all. I was kind of like reading and listening, and
Take your time.
You see? Oh, I see. So is it? I guess I'm guessing that the question is referring to, is the selection that's made in a preference assessment called choice, right?
Eh,
Choice. Sorry. Go
I
ahead.
suppose the question is in a way whether we should when we arrange the arrays, do
Mhm.
we just choose potential reinforcers from knowing our clients, or should we do something a bit more robust, as in like proper preference assessments? And I see here
Oh, I
mentioning
see.
of the trial-based types, like a paired stimulus, for example.
I see. No, thank you for clarifying that too.
I
I
think
think
I
it.
think I think that's it. Correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong, Jane.
I mean, I think it really depends because I feel like, oh, I see. Jane said paired stimulus. I think depending on the client and depending on, and again, this is where literature and practice kind of have to work together to find that sweet spot. I guess kind of giving like a functional behavior assessment as an example, how we start with the indirect assessment, direct assessment, the functional analysis. Depending on the resources and the restraints that are there, you may be able to get to functional analysis, maybe a different variation of a traditional functional analysis, or maybe not get there. Maybe indirect assessment is all you can get. I think it really depends on how you can accrue that information. And I think as a practitioner, it's about doing our best to get the information to make sure that our client succeeds in their treatment. So we do have to work with the resources that we're given with. And kind of, I guess the best might be getting the most information out of it. That will be like the classic answer, I would say. But depending on the setting and depending on the resources, I think there are some variations in terms of where you can get that information, how much you can get it.
I'm going to deliver the last keyword, but I've got one final question I'm going to read out to you because it's a really good point. So the
Mhm.
last keyword for those of you that are accruing your CEUs is blue, as in the color blue. The last keyword is blue. Now, the question says, it's partially a comment and also a question. The colleague is discussing that they work with a lot of young adults and older populations and in hospital settings, and apparently they have very little opportunities for choice making. And as a result, when they are transitioned back in the community, they really struggle to engage in choice making.
Mm.
So in a way, it ends up being a skill that needs to be retaught while someone is older, for example, an adult. But then that also brings a lot of anxiety to those individuals. Any thoughts?
Thank you. That's a wonderful question and wonderful point. I think that really speaks to the volume of the topic, honestly, when we say we're trying to embed choice in our practice, because it gives the opportunities for the clients to contact the natural contingencies. Because if you really think about it, us as adults, as children, as adolescents, every moment is making choices. Life is about making choices, because right now you probably have an allocation, you have a lot of things that you could be doing, but you're choosing to be here, look at the screen and listen to me talking, which I'm very thankful for. So you're allocating a response to something, which is basically choice. And that's what we do every time or every moment of our life. We have so many things we can engage in, but we purposely choose to engage in something, or we allocate a response to something. To that end, it's such a natural way that we behave and interact with the contingencies around us. Embedding choice into practice only allows clients to practice that even further. So I think, if choice could be embedded further into practice, it creates opportunities for the clients to better assimilate back later once they're done with their treatment, or they're back to the setting that's less restrictive. All those things. So I honestly think embedding choices is a great way to make sure that our clients are getting the opportunities to contact the natural contingencies.
Right. Dr. Kim, thank you very much. Thank you very much for taking the time today to talk to us about this very valuable line of research.
You know,
Folks, I'm sure you enjoyed it. And as I said, please click on the link for your CEUs. And you should also see the link for the feedback form. We always welcome your feedback. I do read it, so I go over your suggestions and your points, and I try to act on them. So thank you as well for taking the time to give us some feedback. We will be advertising our next one in due time. And please don't email me about your CUs. I've got 45 days to do the certificates. I will do them. So please don't email me saying where's my CU in 3 days from now. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And I will see you all soon. Thank you again, Dr. Kim.
thank you very much, Thanos, and thank you, everyone.
Bye, folks.